Welcome to Geek Happens, and today we're going to make some dice molds out of silicone with the Sprue method. There's some big dice, I have some normal sized dice, and then I also have some minis that I'm going to make. I've got my cups with the various sizes, some toothpicks, chopsticks, and my poster tack putty. I also have some BSI MaxiCure glue with the Instaset spray. Some people like to drill holes in the dice or things like that, but I like to just put a little bit of glue on a toothpick or in this case, chopstick for the larger one, and then just put it on the face. And that way I only have the one face to worry about. The glue will come off easier. You will still destroy your masters no matter what you use for your master dice. As you use a craft knife to cut out the silicone, it's going to leave little scratches that will be hard to see, but they'll be definitely noticeable in your other molds. And you'll have to sand those out if you're going to make masters again. So here I just put it on the face. I like to do the high numbers on the bottom, so I'm attaching it to the low number on the face and using that Instaset spray to cure it instantly, and then wipe off the residue. I'm using 3-ounce cups for the large molds, and measure kind of how deep I want it in the cup. You want it to be able to be filled and still have about a 1/4 inch or so off of silicone at the top of your mold. And this chopstick's a little bit hard to cut, but make sure you hold on to it and the dice, or it will go flying, as I have done before. And then I'm just going to go ahead, and I can actually just keep using that same chopstick and attach the rest of the faces. Now on these normal ones, I'm going to cut the tip off of a toothpick so that it's not as pointy, but still has a little bit of a bevel in there. And then I'm going to glue the toothpick to the low side of the die. And you could use the toothpick multiple times. I like to use the beveled edge, so I usually cut one end off of each side and just use the tip. But you could just use the one toothpick and cut it up several times. Up to you how you want to do it. I know I make it look like I'm measuring a lot, but really I'm just eyeballing, and when you're going to err, at least err on the side of longer, because you can always cut it shorter, but you don't want to cut it too short. So if you need to go back and cut them shorter when you go to put it in the putty, you'll be able to see that. For these normal size dice, I'm using medicine cups. You can get them pretty much anywhere. So here I have my putty. You just got to stretch it up a little bit so it gets a little bit sticky. And then I'm going to just put them into a ball, and then I'm going to put that ball in the cup. And where some of my chopsticks and toothpicks are off-centered, I'm going to put it off to the side a little bit, not exactly in the middle, because when I put my dice in there, I'm going to want it to angle and be straight in the cup. So we'll take the dice, and we're just going to angle it so that we can put it straight down into the putty and have it be straight in the cup. And as best we can, have the top face flat with the cup. I'm just going to angle it and try and get it in there as best I can. And basically just do that with all the rest of them. Make sure it's centered in there. Sometimes after a little while they may fall over, and you may have to double check it, and definitely check them all before you fill in your silicone to make sure that they're all straight and haven't leaned over or are touching the cup in any way. And you don't need to use as much of the putty, of course. And those where these cups are so tiny, I'm just going to pretty much put it right in the middle, stick it to my finger a little bit so that I can get it in there, because my fingers are a little bit too fat. Even though I have really bony fingers, they're just not small enough to get in that cup very well. So I've got them all in there, ready to go. And I'm using Smooth On Dragon Skin 10 Fast, which cures in 75 minutes, and you only have 8 minutes of work time. And I pre-measured about how much it would take with my part A and B so that I can see it on the lines on the inside when I go to pour. It is a 1-to-1 ratio, and you'll want to make sure that you mix the A and the B separately before putting them together. Once you put them together, you only have 8 minutes of work time. I would suggest using Dragon Skin Medium, not the Fast, just to have more time. They also have a no vacuum, or NV, which doesn't bubble as much, so you don't need to use a pressure pot or a vacuum to make sure you don't have any bubbles. And I made the mistake of thinking that I would be fast enough to mix my A and my B together, have within my 8-minute work time, be able to pour in all of those cups and be able to get it into my pressure pot. But I was too slow. I got the big cups full, half of the small cups full, and then it started thickening and pouring slower, and the pour was wider, and next thing I knew, it just was not pouring out of the carton anymore. And for some reason I lost that part of the video, and so you don't get to see the anticlimactic part of it just stopping to pour, but I ended up having to redo that section later. And then I just started pouring it in as fast as I could, because I knew I was going to be putting it in a pressure pot, so I didn't have to worry too much about bubbles. But normally you'd want to pour kind of high off to the sides and have it just seep down in and fill in underneath and get in all the numbers. And then just leave a little bit over the top. And then I hurried up and put it in the pressure pot and put it up to about 40 psi so that it would get rid of all the bubbles and cure. I'll show the pressure pot section in another video, but I just lost that portion on this one. But this is what it looked like. That's about how much I got done. And the ones that were closer to the end, I just got a little smidge in the top of the little one, but those last 2 or 3 didn't work, and they were very gooey, as I'll show you here in a little bit. So opening these cups, I'm just going to take some cutters and cut the lip. You guys who are probably a lot stronger than me can just rip it open, but I like that extra little help to just cut it, and then I can just easily rip the cup off. Save the putty. And the dragon skin is really, really stretchy, which is why I like it, and it's very durable. But it's a little bit difficult to get off of the putty, so you have to kind of work at it, and once you get it to separate, then you can just work your way around the outside until it fully comes off. There, it started to separate. So I can work my way around, pushing the putty to the inside to get it away from those walls. And then I'm going to pull it out. A little bit difficult, but it comes out. This dragon skin is really the best. Most of the silicones that you get are going to be tin. The dragon skin is platinum, which is very important if you're using 3D printed dice as your models, as the tin will not cure. So here I'm just wanting to cut only on one face because I only want to sand one face. A lot of the other molds you'll cut down and down the sides a little bit. I'm only trying to cut on the one face that the chopstick is in so that it gives a slightly bigger hole. This stuff is supposed to stretch up to almost 600%. So if I just have a big enough hole that I can stretch it enough to pop that dice out, that's really all I need. So I'm just trying really hard to not cut too deeply into my master with the craft knife, but also cut a big enough hole in it and they're on the one side, and I'm actually going to end up doing it on the other side as well. I thought maybe I could do it just one side, but I found that it's easier to go on both sides. And it's hard to tell with my clear masters, but if you have a colored master, it'll be easier to see exactly where the face is and exactly where the numbers are. You don't want to cut across the numbers if you can avoid it. And I tried to cut across the longest side of the face I could, and then just directly across on the other side. You have to kind of put some wedge in it and pull it apart as you're cutting, which is kind of difficult. And then when you try to get this out, it actually is stuck in so good inside the numbers that it just slowly peels out of it. But it's very durable. I was a little bit worried that maybe it hadn't cured or something had gone wrong, but it actually had worked just fine. And it was just sticking really tightly into those numbers, and it just has to slowly peel out. So you have to just work at it. And there you can see that it's sticking and slowly peeling out of the number of that face. So you just have to slowly work each face, pulling the numbers out of each face to finally get it to come out. And it took me a little while on the first one, but after I figured out what I was doing a little bit better, it made it a lot faster. But look how much stretch these have with the dragon skin. Any of the other molds at this point would have ripped in half. But it's very durable, and I would highly recommend the dragon skin out of any other kind. But once you get that out, it looks great inside, and I'm very happy with that mold. And there's only a slight cut in the top. And then we're going to go ahead and do that same thing with all of our other ones. With the other molds, what you normally do is just cut down halfway, like I've mentioned before. And you could use any other kind if you wanted to of silicone. Just make sure that you cut carefully, either along the edges. Some people cut along the edges if they can see them, which is why it's good to use clear silicone if you can. Others like to just cut down the face, just directly across, just as long as you avoid those numbers. The only problem is that's going to leave your seam of your resin, and that's what's going to be messy to clean up. The more sides and faces and edges that you cut across, the more sanding work you have to do to make it look good, which is why I'm doing it to where it's only the one face. And unfortunately, these last ones did not work, so I had to redo all of those, but they were just too gooey. It was already mostly at the end of my work time, so there was no saving it. I ended up just having to redo those. And now I'm going to show you how to make dice really quick. I use Clearcast 7000 resin. It's cheapest. It's part A and B equal parts. Put them in there, mix it up. Make sure you get all the sides and edges. Pour it into another cup again, mix some more. And then in this experiment, I'm going to use black and white mica powder. And I'm going to take only about a spoonful and put it in each one after I separate them into two halves after mixing the whole thing together in this instance. So there's my black and my white. And then we're going to use these pipettes that I got on Amazon. You can get several of them for really cheap, and just use the pipette to squirt through your sprue hole into the molds until you have all of your molds filled in. And once you have all your molds full, then you're going to go ahead and get your pressure pot, put your dice in there so that when you pressurize it, they won't have any bubbles in them. And I like to pressurize mine at about 32, 35 psi. When you tighten the lid, make sure you tighten the opposite ends. I'm too weak to do it by hand with this particular pot, so I had to use pliers. There I just hook it up to a compressor, open the valve, let in my air. If you ever need to know how to make a pressure pot, I can send you links for a good video for that. And then here's the best part, seeing our dice. And as you can see, they turned out really well. The seam is only on one face, so I'll only have to cut that sprue and then sand that one side and it'll be done. And see on the older molds that I have, I cut down the sides halfway and the seam just goes across a bunch of faces, and you'll have to do a lot more finishing work on those. But very happy with the overall appearance of these dice, and it was very easy to finish them up, sand them with some microfiber sanding paper, and then painted them with a gold. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, click that little bell for notifications of any new videos, share it with your friends or other dice making enthusiasts. Check out 3dmtabletop.com if you want to have your own custom dice made, and make sure to support me on Patreon to help me pay for the silicone that I just wasted because I was a little bit inattentive to the time that it was going to take to do that.